fascinating? The moment you achieve something significant, there's this overwhelming urge that rises within you. It's almost magnetic. You want to tell someone, you want to share it, you want the world to know what you've accomplished. And I understand that feeling completely, because we're wired for connection, we're wired for validation, we're wired to be seen and heard. But tonight I want to challenge something that might seem counterintuitive at first. I want to talk about the power of silence, the strength in secrecy, and why the most successful people you'll ever meet have mastered the art of keeping their moves quiet until the results speak louder than any announcement ever could. There's a young man I heard about some years back. His name was David, and he worked in a small accounting firm in the heart of the city. Every day, he'd show up at 8 in the morning, walk through his lunch break, and leave around 6 in the evening. To everyone around him, David was just another employee grinding through the daily routine, nothing special, nothing remarkable. His colleagues would gather around the water cooler, talking about their side hustles, their investment plans, their big dreams of starting businesses. They'd share every detail, every strategy, every connection they were making. And they'd always invite David to join the conversation. What about you, David? What are you working on? What's your plan? And David would smile, that gentle, knowing smile, and say something simple like, oh, I'm just trying to be better at what I do here. And they'd laugh. Some would even mock him behind his back. Poor David. They say no ambition, no vision, just content with his little desk and his little salary. But what they didn't know, what David never told them, was that for the past 3 years, he'd been waking up at 4 in the morning. While they were still asleep, David was studying. He was learning about financial systems, about market dynamics, about investment strategies that most people never even heard of. He wasn't just reading books. He was connecting with mentors through online platforms. He was taking courses. He was building something in the shadows. And here's the remarkable part. While his colleagues were busy announcing their plans, posting about their new ventures on social media, telling everyone who would listen about the businesses they were going to start, David was actually building. He wasn't talking about it. He wasn't seeking validation. He wasn't looking for applause. He was in the laboratory of his life, conducting experiments, making mistakes where no one could see them, learning lessons without the pressure of public opinion weighing on every decision. 4 years later, David walked into that office and submitted his resignation. His colleagues were shocked. Where are you going? They asked. What are you going to do? And that's when they discovered that David had built an investment portfolio that was generating 6 times his annual salary. He developed relationships with investors who were now backing his own financial consulting firm. He created something substantial, something real, something that didn't need to be announced because it announced itself. The people who mocked him, who pitied him, who thought he lacked ambition, they were still at the water cooler, still talking about the businesses they were going to start someday, still making announcements about plans that never materialized, still seeking validation for ideas that never transformed into reality. And I'm not sharing this to make you feel bad about sharing your dreams. I'm sharing this because there's a principle here that most people miss entirely. There's a season for silence and there's a season for speaking. And wisdom is knowing which season you're in. Think about a seed for a moment. When a farmer plants a seed in the ground, what happens next? Does the seed immediately shoot up out of the soil and announce its presence? No. It goes down first. It goes deep into the darkness where no one can see it. It breaks open in that secret place. It develops roots in the hidden place. And all of this happens without fanfare, without announcement, without anyone knowing what's taking place beneath the surface. The seed doesn't send out a press release saying, I'm about to become a mighty tree. It just does the work in the secret place. And then, when the time is right, when the foundation is solid, when the roots are deep enough, that's when it breaks through the surface. That's when it becomes visible. And by the time people see it, it's already strong enough that their opinions can't uproot it. But what do we do in our generation? We announce the seed before it even goes into the ground. We tell everyone about the tree we are going to grow before we've even prepared the soil. We seek affirmation for potential instead of walking in the secret place until that potential becomes reality. And here's what happens when you do that. You expose your seed to every weather condition before it has the strength to withstand the storm. You invite opinions when you should be inviting growth. You create accountability to people who have no investment in your success. I remember a woman named Sandra who attended a conference I was speaking at several years ago. After the session, she approached me with this electric energy, the kind that comes when someone has just had a breakthrough idea. Her eyes were bright, her words were tumbling out rapidly, and she said, I've just figured out exactly what I'm supposed to do with my life. I'm going to start a non-profit organization that helps young women in underserved communities access education and mentorship. I've got the whole vision. I can see it so clearly, and I could feel her passion. It was genuine, it was beautiful. But then she said something that concerned me. I'm going to go home and tell everyone. I'm going to post about it on social media. I'm going to start a crowdfunding campaign. I want everyone to know about this vision because I want them to hold me accountable. And I paused. I looked at her and I said something that surprised her. I said, what if you didn't tell anyone for 6 months? What if you just worked on it in secret, built the foundation, figured out the systems, made the mistakes privately, and then revealed it when you had something substantial to show? She looked at me like I'd asked her to stop breathing. But how will people support me if they don't know? She asked. And that's the question, isn't it? That's the trap. We've been conditioned to believe that support means early announcement. That partnership means premature revelation. But real support doesn't come from people cheering for your potential. Real support comes from people investing in your progress, and progress happens in the secret place. 6 months later, I saw Sandra again, and the light in her eyes had dimmed. I asked her what happened to the non-profit. She sighed and said, I told everyone about it just like I planned. And you know what happened? Everyone had an opinion. My mother said I should focus on getting married first. My friend said the non-profit space was too saturated. My former professor told me I didn't have enough experience. My cousin said I should start with something smaller. My neighbor said I should get a corporate sponsor first. And all these voices, all these opinions, they just created this noise in my head. I started doubting myself. I started questioning if the vision was real. And eventually I just stopped. The energy died. The vision faded. And now I don't even know if I want to do it anymore. And my heart broke for her because I'd seen this pattern countless times. I'd watched brilliant ideas die, not because they weren't viable, not because the person wasn't capable, but because they were exposed too early. They were announced before they were anchored. They were shared before they were stable. And the weight of everyone's opinions crushed them before they had the strength to carry that weight. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. When you announce your plans too early, you give people access to your seed before it has roots. You invite them into your laboratory while you're still conducting experiments. You ask them to judge your foundation while you're still laying the bricks. And most people, even well-meaning people, don't have the vision to see what you're building. They can only see what's in front of them in that moment. They can only judge based on their own experiences, their own limitations, their own fears. And their judgment, even when it comes from love, can plant seeds of doubt that strangle your dream before it has a chance to breathe. There's something else that happens when you keep quiet about what you're building. You protect your energy. Because here's the truth. Every time you explain your vision to someone who doesn't understand it, you drain yourself. Every time you defend your dream to someone who can't see it, you lose a little bit of fuel. Every time you try to convince someone who isn't convinced, you waste resources that should be going into actually building the thing. Your energy is finite. Your time is limited. And you cannot afford to spend it on people who want to debate what you should be developing. I think about all the great inventions, all the revolutionary ideas that changed the world. Most of them were developed in secret. Most of them were built in basements, in garages, in small rooms where the creator could focus without the noise of external opinion. Thomas Edison didn't hold a press conference. Every time he tried a new filament for the light bulb, he failed thousands of times in private before he succeeded in public. The Wright brothers didn't invite critics to their early flight attempts. They worked in obscurity until they had something that couldn't be denied. And this isn't about being secretive for the sake of secrecy. This isn't about pride or wanting to surprise people. This is about protection. This is about wisdom. This is about understanding that there's a time when your dream is too fragile to be exposed to harsh elements. There's a season when your vision needs to be incubated, not interrogated. There's a phase when silence is more productive than speech. Now, someone might say, but don't we need accountability? Don't we need people to know our goals so they can help us stay on track? And yes, accountability is valuable. But there's a difference between strategic accountability and public announcement. Strategic accountability is when you share your vision with 2 or 3 people who've already proven they can handle the weight of what you're carrying. People who've demonstrated wisdom. People who've shown they're for you, not just curious about you. People who have the capacity to nurture your seed, not trample on it. Public announcement is when you broadcast your intentions to anyone who listens without discernment, without wisdom, without understanding that not everyone deserves access to your process. Your dream is sacred. Your vision is valuable, and you cannot afford to cast it before people who don't have the capacity to honor it. That's not being secretive. That's being strategic. That's not being proud. That's being protective. That's not lacking faith. That's operating in wisdom. I want you to understand something profound. The enemy of your destiny isn't always someone who wishes you harm. Sometimes it's simply someone who can't see what you see. It's a person who loves you but operates from a place of fear. It's a friend who means well but projects their limitations onto your potential. It's a family member who wants to protect you but doesn't understand that protection sometimes means letting you take risks they wouldn't take. And when you announce your plans too early, you give all these people, these well-meaning people, the opportunity to speak death over something that's trying to come alive. There was a businessman I met years ago. He told me about a time when he had an opportunity to acquire a property that everyone thought was worthless. It was in a part of town that had been declining for decades. Buildings were abandoned. Businesses had closed. Most people saw decay and danger. But this man, he saw something different. He saw potential. He saw that the city's development plan was going to transform that area within 5 years. He saw that new infrastructure was coming. He saw what others couldn't see. And he had the opportunity to buy multiple properties at a fraction of what they'd be worth in the future. But he made a mistake. He told his friends, he told his family, he shared his vision at a dinner party. And you know what happened? They laughed at him. They called him foolish. They said he was wasting his money. They said he was being impulsive. They questioned his judgment. They even implied that he was going through some kind of crisis. And for a moment, just a moment, he hesitated for a brief period. He questioned himself. The chorus of voices was so loud, so unified, so confident in their assessment that he almost pulled back from the opportunity. But something in him, some inner knowing, said proceed anyway. So he did. He bought those properties. He kept quiet about it. After that initial mistake, he walked in silence. He developed the properties without updates. He positioned himself without announcements. And 5 years later, when everyone could see what he'd seen all along, when the area transformed exactly as he'd predicted, when those properties multiplied in value, the same people who'd mocked him were asking, how did you know? Why didn't you tell us? We could have invested too. And his response was gracious but pointed. I did tell you, he said. And you told me I was wrong. So I learned to walk in this silence. That's the lesson. You don't owe people explanations for what they can't yet see. You don't need permission from those who lack vision. You don't require validation from people who haven't been where you're going. Your responsibility is to the vision, not to the crowd. Your obligation is to the seed, not to the spectators. There's something I need you to grasp deeply here. When you move in silence, you're not hiding from success. You're hiding from sabotage. You're not running from recognition. You're running toward readiness. You're not afraid of being seen. You're wise enough to know that timing matters. Because premature exposure doesn't just invite doubt. It invites interference. It invites energy vampires who disguise themselves as concerned advisors. It invites dream killers who present themselves as realists. It invites limitations that dress up as wisdom. Let me tell you about a young teacher named Michael. Michael taught at a public school in a struggling district. And every day he watched talented students fall through the cracks because they couldn't afford the resources they needed to excel. It broke his heart. These were brilliant minds trapped in circumstances that had nothing to do with their potential. So Michael had an idea. What if he could create an after-school program that provided free tutoring, mentorship, and college preparation for these students? What if he could connect them with professionals who could show them possibilities beyond their current reality? But Michael knew something crucial. He knew that if he announced this vision too early, the bureaucracy would bury it. The administration would create obstacles. The teachers' union might have concerns. The school board would want approvals. The parents might have questions. And while all of that would be happening, while everyone was debating and discussing and deliberating, another year of students would slip away without help. So Michael made a different choice. He said nothing. Instead, he started small. He began staying after school for an extra hour, working with 5 students who needed help the most. He didn't call it a program. He didn't send out flyers. He didn't ask for permission. He just did it. Then those 5 students told other students, and suddenly 10 students were showing up, then 15, then 20. Michael started reaching out to professionals he knew, people from his own network, asking if they'd volunteer an hour here and there to speak with these students. And people said yes, because they weren't being asked to commit to some official program with obligations and liability concerns. They were just having conversations with kids. Within 6 months, Michael had 40 students in his unofficial program. He'd connected 12 of them with mentors. He'd helped 8 students raise their grades by 2-letter grades. He'd assisted 3 students in securing scholarships they didn't even know existed. And he'd done all of this without a single announcement, without a single meeting, without a single request for approval. He just operated in the margin, in the space where bureaucracy couldn't reach him because he didn't know he was there. Then something remarkable happened. The principal noticed. She saw these students transforming. She saw their grades improving. She saw their confidence rising. And she called Michael into her office. He thought he was in trouble. He thought she was going to shut it down. But instead she said, what you're doing is extraordinary. I want to make it official. I want to give you a classroom. I want to allocate resources. I want to help you expand this. And in that moment, Michael's silence bore fruit, because he didn't present an idea that could be rejected. He presented results that couldn't be denied. That program is now in 12 schools across the district. It's helped over 800 students in the last 4 years. It's become a model that other districts are studying. And it all happened because one man understood that sometimes you have to build the thing before you can talk about the thing. Sometimes you have to prove it works before you try to explain how it will work. Sometimes silence is the most powerful strategy you have. Now, I want to address something important, because I know some of you are thinking, but what about faith? Doesn't faith require us to speak things into existence? Doesn't declaration have power? And yes, absolutely, your words carry creative force. But there's a difference between declaration and advertisement. There's a difference between speaking life over your vision in your prayer closet and posting your 5-year plan on social media for people who aren't going with you to comment on. There's a difference between confessing what you believe in the secret place and seeking validation from people in the public square. Declaration is between you and your destiny. Advertisement is between you and people's opinions. One builds faith. The other builds dependency on external validation. One strengthens your resolve. The other creates pressure to perform for an audience that isn't invested in your outcome. And here's what's dangerous about that pressure. When you announce your plans publicly, You create a psychological contract with your audience. Now, you're not just building for the vision. You're building to prove to people that you weren't lying, that you weren't exaggerating, that you weren't foolish. And that shift in motivation, that subtle change from internal calling to external validation, that's where dreams go to die. I knew a woman named Grace who'd been working a corporate job for 15 years. She was good at it, successful by conventional standards, but deeply unfulfilled. Every day felt like she was living someone else's life. Then one evening, she was driving home from work and she passed a community center in a neglected part of town. And something stirred in her spirit. She felt this overwhelming conviction that she was supposed to do something there, something with the elderly residents who lived in that community, many of them isolated and forgotten. Grace started volunteering on weekends. She'd visit the senior center, sit with the elderly, listen to their stories, and she noticed something heartbreaking. These people had decades of wisdom, years of experience, lifetimes of lessons, and no one was interested. They'd been discarded by a society that values youth and productivity. So Grace had a vision. What if she could create an intergenerational mentorship program? What if she could connect these elders with young people who needed guidance? What if she could help both generations discover value in each other? But here's what Grace did differently. She didn't quit her job. She didn't make any grand announcements. She didn't start a non-profit on day one. She just kept showing up week after week, month after month. She built relationships. She earned trust. She learned the real needs, not just what she assumed the needs were. She made mistakes in private. She adjusted her approach without public scrutiny. She tested different formats without the pressure of donors or boards or public expectations. 2 years later, Grace had developed a model that actually worked. She had 20 elderly mentors paired with 20 young people from troubled backgrounds. She had data showing improvements in the young people's decision making, their school attendance, their family relationships. She had testimonials from the elders about how this had given them purpose again, how they felt valued again, how they had reasons to wake up in the morning again. And only then, only after she had undeniable proof that this worked, did Grace start talking about it publicly. Only after she had a foundation that couldn't be shaken did she seek funding. Only after she had results that spoke louder than promises did she ask for support. Today, that program operates in 7 cities. It's been featured in national publications. It's received grants from major foundations. Grace eventually left her corporate job to run it full time. But none of that would have happened if she'd announced the vision before she tested the model. None of that would have materialized if she sought approval before she'd gathered evidence. None of that would exist if she hadn't understood that some things need to be built in the dark before they can stand in the light. Here's what I need you to understand. The world is full of talkers. It's overflowing with people who have big dreams and loud voices and detailed plans that never materialize. Social media has made it worse. Now everyone's an entrepreneur before they've made a single sale. Everyone's an author before they've written a single page. Everyone's a success story before they've had a single success. And I'm not criticizing ambition. I'm not against dreaming. But I am concerned about this culture of announcement without action, this pattern of declaration without dedication, this habit of seeking applause for intentions rather than achievements. Because here's what happens in that environment. Real builders, people who are actually doing the work, they get drowned out by the noise of people who are just talking about the work. And worse, those real builders start feeling like they need to announce too, like they need to compete for attention. Like silence means they are not ambitious enough or faithful enough or bold enough. But that's a lie. Silence doesn't mean you're not moving. It might mean you're moving so strategically that you can't afford distractions. It might mean you're building something so significant that premature exposure would compromise it. It might mean you're operating at a level of wisdom that the crowd doesn't understand yet. Think about the most powerful forces in nature. They don't announce themselves until their presence is undeniable. The sun doesn't send a message before it rises. It just rises. And everyone knows. The ocean doesn't advertise its power. It just demonstrates it. And everyone respects it. An earthquake doesn't post on social media. It just moves. And everyone feels it. And that's the kind of impact you should be aiming for. Not the impact that comes from telling people what you're going to do, but the impact that comes from doing what you said nothing about until it was done. I'm telling you this because I care about your success. I'm sharing this because I've seen too many gifted people abort their destinies by exposing them too early. I've watched too many powerful visions die because they were discussed with people who had no capacity to nurture them. I've witnessed too many breakthrough moments turn into breakdowns because the person couldn't resist the urge to tell everyone before the thing was ready to be told. So here's my challenge to you. Whatever you're building right now, whatever vision is growing inside you, whatever dream is taking shape in your spirit, protect it, guard it, keep it in the secret place until it's strong enough to withstand public opinion. Stop announcing every move. Stop seeking validation for every step. Stop giving people access to your process who haven't earned the right to speak into your progress. Walk in silence, build in obscurity, develop in the dark. And when the time is right, when the foundation is solid, when the roots are deep, when the structure is sound, then emerge, then reveal, then let the work speak for itself. Because the truth is, people don't remember your announcements. They remember your accomplishments. They don't celebrate your intentions. They celebrate your impact. They don't invest in your plans. They invest in your proof. So give them something worth remembering. Give them something worth celebrating. Give them something worth investing in. And you do that not by talking more, but by building more. Not by announcing louder, but by walking deeper. Not by seeking attention, but by deserving attention. The greatest power you have is not in your ability to tell people what you're doing. It's in your ability to show them what you've done. So be patient, be strategic, be wise. Walk while others watch. Build while others browse. Create while others critique. And when they finally see what you've built, when they finally understand what you've created, when they finally recognize what you've accomplished, it won't matter that you never told them it was coming, because the results will tell the story better than your words ever could. That's the power of silence. That's the strength of secrecy. That's the wisdom of knowing when to speak and when to simply walk. Never tell people what you do. Just do it so well that eventually they can't help but see it.